Thanksgiving celebration in the ministry local church. So I guess I just wanted to speak to some of our trip guidelines that we do have laid out in one of the team meetings that you'll go over with your team members. But I just want you as leaders to know, I just want to hit a couple things. One is not making promises. So you as a team leader, your team members, not making promises to our ministry partners, churches, whatever organization, on your personal behalf, on Celebration's behalf. You know, let's just say that if you do that, it could compromise the relationship. So what do I mean by promises? Monetary promises, as well as like, hey, if you're ever in Jacksonville, you know, I mean, it's okay to want to host someone, but I guess I would just say it would be great to always teach your team members to, if they have any questions, run stuff by you, and then if you ever have a question, definitely run it by me. But we've just come into some sticky things when with team leaders who had all great intentions, didn't realize what they were promising, and then all the energy it took on the back end to kind of get down to the bottom of things. So another thing that I would say is no surprises. So you as a team leader could go to one of our campuses, see maybe a need, and compare it back to the States. Well, you know, third world Costa Rica, their campus is going to look very differently for a reason. You know, they're not going to have all the lights and everything that we have at the arena, and that's for a reason. So I guess what I'm saying is no surprises, as in don't try to surprise maybe a host or a campus pastor with a gift of some sort by trying to coordinate someone with maybe somebody on the side who's on the field. Whoever's hosting you, whether it's the campus pastor, whether it's the representative, clear communication with them all the way. You're submitted to their authority. Doesn't matter if they're an assistant, it doesn't matter if they're a director, it doesn't matter if they're a pastor. You run everything through them, and please don't try to coordinate anything off the side. Just in the past, it's, again, all good intentions, but it just caused some confusion, distractions, things like that. So we do have some guidelines, like, you know, if you do, and another note is just not giving any money to any of the nationals. And if you want, and again, run everything through your team leader, the local ministry partner there on the field, because again, it can really compromise the long-term work that we're doing on the field. The question has come up in the past if people want to give to campus pastors, so we included that now in our, it's on page, I'm all referring to page 58, which just talks about trip guidelines, communication. You don't have to put there now, but just FYI, it's in there. So if you do want to give to campus pastors, that's great. You can do it online when you get back to the States. Again, it's just for accountability purposes, it's for covering purposes on your end, on their end. So we just ask that if you do feel led to give, you can definitely do that online when you get back. And then also want to let you know that every team does raise an offering amount that we send over. And as well as, like, let's say you're at a campus, whether it's Costa Rica, Zimbabwe, Northern Ireland, on Sunday, anyone can give an offering, you know, just like you would here. So that's always an option. But just so you know and communicate to your team, every team does raise an offering to bless whatever campus or ministry we're partnering with. And oftentimes teams go above and beyond and they raise project money. That's the majority of teams are also raising project money, whether it's building something, putting on a sisterhood event, you know, gathering supplies to put on a Christmas party in Costa Rica, anything like that. So, so know that, and that's a great thing to communicate to our team as well.
Last thing I want to touch on is that team training is a process. You know, leading a missions trip is not just a one-time event. There's really a process to it. So it's your pre-field set of responsibilities, your on-the-field set of responsibilities, and your post-field set of responsibilities. So pre-field is obvious. It's your training, it's your meetings, your preparation. You might host an interest meeting. You know, you might be following up emails with those that signed up at the expo, or just getting different inquiries. You're starting from interest to departure is your pre-field. Again, I want to encourage you to not just see the logistics as the important part, but to see the spiritual preparation of your team. And if you guys can take, I don't know if this is optimistic, I really think you can get through this book in like 30 minutes. If you just read it through, just get an overview of all the meetings and the subjects, We try to really equip you with some resources to just give you a starting point. Like I said in the past, this isn't the Bible. You don't have to go off of it completely, but it's definitely a good starting point for your team meetings and what topics need to be talked about. And, we've used a lot of these for years, and we know what are the things that come up and that need to be discussed on the front end. So use your time as a leader pre-field should be, like I said, a lot of logistics, but also a lot of just preparing your team. Okay, on the field, you're going to be some of the biggest responsibilities you have, because when you hit the ground running, most of our team's partners take on the load once you get there. So they've got your schedule, they've got your food. Every now and then, some of our teams are a little different, like Israel. Pastor Jason led last year. I think y'all had to go get your own food and grocery shop and cook yourselves. And so every now and then, some of our teams will be like that, and they'll have to rough it compared to some of our other trips. But for the most part, your host and your partners are gonna take over when you get there. So you kind of turn into, okay, some of your biggest goal is just covering and shepherding your team. It's making sure they're doing okay. It's helping them to stay envisioned, to stay, sometimes you have discouraging moments on the field, or, God, I was talking to somebody before the meeting started, and we were talking about how, like, God, all of a sudden, you're on this mission trip, and you have this mirror in front of you, and you're just seeing all your issues, you're seeing all your problems. Like, God has a way of using the mission field to expose things that you have so many comforts here in the U.S. and in your home, and you can hide from some of those things, and when you go out in the mission field, you're just open and bare. And I know I've dealt with a ton of things I didn't realize I was dealing with on the mission field. And so some of your team members are going to go through that, and you may have to be there to help them, make sure they're doing okay, make sure another team member's looking out for them if they're having a hard time. So it could be a specific team member, or it could be maybe the day didn't go as you thought it would, and your team's a little bit discouraged. Maybe they didn't feel like God used them as much as they hoped that day, or whatever. Your job is to still see everything through spiritual eyes, and see everything you're leading your team, and you're helping them to stay envisioned, and God is using you, and God is, use every second you can. If you feel like you're wasting time, start praying. Start praying for the cities. There's always something to do, and never feel like you have wasted time. So your job is to just kind of keep those eyes throughout the trip and just stay focused on just constantly, okay, God, what do you want to do next? What do you want to do here? How can I speak vision over my team and help them to stay on track when they're discouraged? Also, just something as easy as making sure you're scheduling your morning Devo times in. It's a goal of ours that everybody has their personal devotion, and then you come together for a team devotional. And so, your host, your host, like 6-8 or whoever, is not going to say, they may not tell you, okay, here's your Devo time, and here's your breakfast time, and this is when we are leaving time. So you just have to take the schedule they give you, and you decide, okay, we need to meet at 5 a.m., or we need to whatever, in order to fit it in. Most of our teams don't have to get up that early, don't worry. But in Costa Rica, the sun comes up so early. Some months you're up anyway with the sun. And the dogs and the chickens or whatever they are. And you're like, okay, I thought I was going to get some sleep. Never mind. Okay, so you're scheduling the morning devos, and then the evening debriefs, which you guys are familiar with. And then there's some great questions in here that will help you. Sometimes it's not as easy as saying, how are y'all doing? How was your day? Sometimes you got to help your team really start debriefing, ask some specific questions. What was your biggest challenge today? What are you noticing? What are you learning about the culture? It could be as easy as that, just breaking the ice. Some people aren't verbal processors. It takes them a while to open up, and sometimes you just have to help your team really get to that place of openness with each other, get to that place of processing what God's doing in their lives. Some of those are the most powerful moments on the mission field when you have that time together. Something as simple as thumb check. I think we've talked about this before, like, how are you doing? Somebody might not say, I'm not doing so well, but they might go like this, or they might go like this, and you can be like, okay, and you have a gauge of how your team members are doing, and you can talk to them from there. I also want to encourage you, it's always a great idea to have a team encouragement night. So some point during your trip, have a time where you go around and you encourage each other. I've heard some of the most life-changing experiences when people did that for each other. Sometimes, you're dealing with a lot of insecurity on the mission field. You don't know. You see so-and-so like flourishing, sharing the gospel, being like an evangelist, and you're like, I'm terrible. I'm so not good at that, and God's not using me. Then you hear your team talk about, encourage you, and you're like, okay, I'm not that bad. Like, God, there's gifts within me. God's using each of us in a different way. So some of that is just really great to get your team comfortable with each other and to feel at ease and just be a part of God. I really believe that God positions the right teams together, and he works through team members and team leaders as a part of the process of what God's doing in your life on the mission field. Okay, and then post-field. So we really, I think it's pretty mandatory that you have a post-trip party. This could be like a debrief / party where you get back together a couple weeks after you come back, you share about your life, how you're doing, and you just kind of celebrate what God did. And most of the time, teams, you don't even have to say this is mandatory. Most of the time, the teams are like, when are we getting together? How are we we got to get back together. So it's usually pretty easy to schedule. I also want to encourage you to do an outreach. And I think I'll talk about that in a little bit when we go to our team meetings. But, okay, let me make this quick. One other thing I wanted to say was, and you might want to start this when you're on the field, but many people really struggle. There's a whole section on reentry, so I just encourage you again to read through this. But many people struggle in different ways reentering back into life. Everyone kind of just has a different journey with this. One of the really common responses is people don't know how to reconcile their life and how they felt on the mission field, how they felt praying and seeing God move with their life in the United States, and not feeling that same purpose. It's like you feel so much purpose, you're in tune with God, you're hearing God's voice, you're seeing God move, and then you come back to this life where you have this monotonous job, or you feel like God's not using you in that way, and it's this hard thing to really kind of navigate. Sometimes people can get depressed, sometimes they can feel like they don't know what their purpose is. I just want to encourage you to help them through that journey, because the truth is that God has so much purpose for you still in your job. Even as monotonous and boring as it feels, God has still called you to be a light here in the United States. You're here with your sphere of influence for a reason. And so, sometimes it starts on the field at the very end of your trip, asking those questions like, how are you going to take this experience home? What have you learned here? How can you apply this into your everyday life? And it may be somebody in your team's like, I need to start serving at church. It may be, I need to start getting involved with local outreach. I really love reaching the poor. It may be something, and maybe I need to encourage my coworkers more and actually talk to them about Jesus. And you never know what someone's going to say, but help them start processing that. And I would encourage you in your post-trip party or debrief, ask that question again. Keep that in front of them. How are you taking what you learned? How are you living out that purpose that you felt on the mission field in your everyday life back here in Jacksonville? Help them bridge that gap. They're going to feel a gap. Most people will feel a gap, and it's just part of the process of helping them to see it differently, not see it as you don't have to move to the mission field as a full-time missionary to feel that same purpose that you felt on a short-term missions trip. It's taking that mindset, taking what God did and applying it to your life. So that makes sense? Just want to encourage y'all for the post-trip, post-field part of your responsibility. So I think we're going to get into some specifics on team meetings and trainings real quick. Can we do that?